50 variations of tricky. Calm tricky, angry tricky, very angry tricky, extremely angry demonic tricky, tricky pointing tricky, MasterChef tricky, lives in a society, tiki. Ome wa mo shindiru.
NANI?!
Old tricky. Sus tricky 2.0. Squidward tricky original. Squidward tricky 2.0. Clay tricky, clown tricky 2.0. Gangsta tricky, vibing tricky original, vibing tricky. Main menu vibing tricky. How did I forget this tricky? And this tricky. Low quality thick tricky, thick twerking tricky. Tiki. Da tricky. Convertible mask tricky. Convertible unmasked tricky. Tricky riding convertible tricky. 8-bit tricky, 32-bit tricky, 1024 bits tricky, 2048 bits tricky, Dr. Tricky, Minecraft tricky, unmasked Minecraft tricky, invisible tricky, this is not tricky, simping tricky, farting tricky, Lego tricky, drip tricky, what the, Snoopsnot's Discord server tricky, stats explainer tricky, sad tricky. He is sad because no one subscribes to Snoopsnot or join his Discord server.